Today we're going to look at the topic of yeast reproduction. Yeast reproduce through a process called budding, and we're going to go through the steps today. Before we look at the reproduction of yeast, we need to look at the yeast's actual structure. Yeast cells are usually oval or round in shape, and they have a thin cell wall and a cell membrane that contains the cytoplasm. Inside of the cytoplasm then, you have some of the vital parts the yeast needs to survive. A food storage area, a nucleus, and a vacuole. The nucleus is something we're going to be looking at in a lot of detail when we look at how yeast reproduces through budding. The first stage of yeast reproduction is when the yeast cell has favourable conditions. We begin then with what's called the parent cell. The parent cell is the original cell in which the budding is going to begin. If the parent cell has its favourable conditions, a bulge or a little bud will form on the side of the parent cell. This is the beginning of the process of budding. The next stage of budding is now that the bud is forming at the side of the parent cell, the nucleus of the yeast cell begins to move towards this bud. The third stage in yeast reproduction is that now the nucleus has moved towards the new bud, it divides in half. Half of the nucleus stays in the original parent cell, and the other half moves into the new cell that's budding. The cell wall now between the parent cell and the new cell has broken down to allow that nucleus to move over into the new cell. Now the nucleus has moved into the new cell, a wall forms separating the parent cell from the new cell that has budded. This cell wall that forms will allow the new yeast cell to break away from the parent cell in time. Now the bud or new cell has separated from the parent cell. This continues to happen at a rapid rate. As you can see from the diagram, multiple new buds can form while still attached to the parent cell. This means that yeast can produce very rapidly over a number of hours when conditions are favourable. Yeast will stop budding when it runs out of time, when the temperature becomes too hot, or when it runs out of food. This stops the yeast reproduction cycle.